Constitutional Court has given the University of South Africa until the start of 2023, or at least the academic year then, to revise its language policy. That's after it found that the decision to scrap Afrikaans as a medium of teaching and learning was in violation of Section 29 of the Constitution. Unisa contended that the catering for Afrikaans students would be at the expense of other official languages. But Afriforum challenged that in court, and for their reaction, let's bring in the head of cultural affairs, Alana Bailey, who joins us now via our video link. And Alana, thanks very much for making time. It's great to see you. You must be pleased.
Yes, Ayanda, obviously we are very pleased, and I think it's a huge victory not only for Afrikaans or for Afriforum or the students at Unisa, but definitely for all language groups, and we hope that other groups will now also demand mother language education at the tertiary level.
Yeah. Take us through the history of this matter. I mean, I remember Unisa not only being the institution at the center of, call it, discord over language. Stellenbosch University at some stage had to contend with some of these issues. What was the thrust of the argument that you were making in court?
Yes, and actually before that, also at the University of Pretoria and the University of the Free State, we had similar court processes. Free State also ended up in the Constitutional Court, and then the court ruled against us. In the case of Unisa, we felt we have to continue with the case because of the unique nature of Unisa. In the first place, they have more than 300,000 students, and of that, about 10% are Afrikaans speaking, so it's about 30,000 students, which are more than the number of students at most of the residential universities in South Africa. So we felt that it's definitely worthwhile to proceed with the legal processes. And then also, of course, it's a distance learning facility. So we felt there's also a big moral obligation on us, because very often the students who make use of distance learning are the students who did not necessarily have access to very good schools, and very often are people who start studying later in life because they are obliged to if they want to have a better career or more opportunities. So we are really pleased about this, and I think it will make a meaningful difference in the lives of a lot of students.
Yeah, it's interesting what Unisa was saying in its own defense, and it's a pity we don't have them on the line, but they were saying that they can't really have Afrikaans continue as a medium of instruction, a medium of teaching and learning, because it might be detrimental to other official languages. You obviously weren't convinced by that.
No, one of the arguments that we hear very often, and that was also raised by University of Stellenbosch, is the cost argument, saying that, well, it's very expensive to have more than one primary language of education, and if you use more languages, then you cannot empower the rest of the languages. But I think that is one thing we will have to look at very carefully in future in South Africa, because we have one of the largest or the highest dropout rates of students in the world. And I think one of the reasons why that happens is because we don't have enough mother language education at school level, and definitely we don't have that at tertiary level. We have a bit of Afrikaans, and we see a little bit of isiXhosa and of isiZulu coming through, but we really need more mother language education at tertiary level. And it is expensive, but not that expensive. I think the cost of the dropout rate will outweigh the cost of accommodating more languages.
Yeah. I mean, given the principles that underpin Afriforum's challenging this matter, is it safe to say that the group would also represent those who want other languages, for instance, to be used as a medium of instruction in other instances?
Well, I think we would definitely like to assist, because now we have more than 6 years of legal experience. It's interesting, we are even being contacted often by other countries, because in the Netherlands, they face basically the same language battle against English. Smaller languages are being endangered by English at tertiary level, and worldwide more and more institutions, but also economic specialists realize that where you phase out the local languages and go for English or the stronger languages like Spanish or French, you often, in the first place, encourage your youth to immigrate, And in the second place, they lose their ability to formulate their arguments. So they might be very good with the subjects where you memorize, but the subjects where you have to deliver services to your local population, like, for example, psychology, and the subjects where you have to understand and not just memorize, are the ones where students have problems if they do it in a second language.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting what's emerged as conversation around this case. I mean, I'm reading, for instance, some commentary made by some acclaimed Afrikaans writers who say that, we distort history when we try to present Afrikaans in modern day as an increasingly whiter language than it really is. Do you also get the perception that that's the case? In other words, there's this perception that Afrikaans only benefits white people, and that's why there are people who have perhaps called it an aversion to having the language as a medium of instruction in places of higher learning, including but not limited to Unisa, Stellenbosch, and the University of Pretoria.
I think it's true, and I think Judge Majid also referred to that when he handed down the ruling and said we have to take into consideration that now Afrikaans is being spoken by more non-white people than by white people. So sometimes the race argument is used, and sometimes there's reference to the political past of Afrikaans, but I think it's one of the really non-racial languages in South Africa. It's being spoken by so many different races. And it has such a rich history because it encompasses local, but also Asian and also European roots. And that makes it a truly unique language in the world, and something that should be treasured as a cultural treasure by South Africa, and not seen as just how can I say, something that is racially contentious.
Yeah. Linguists among us would be excited, for instance, by the prospect of any language being a holder of not only culture, but of intellectual development. In fact, there are many writers even on the continent who say that we should actually push to have even more languages introduced as medium of instructions in places like higher learning, because we don't want those languages to almost be frozen in time because they're not used in discourse. I mean, with that in mind, given the challenges that Afrikaans specifically is experiencing, are you getting a sense that it is able to bypass this, call it, dearth of being frozen in time?
Yes, I think that's why it's important to retain it in tertiary level spaces. A lot is happening in the private sector, but it is important also to retain the language in public institutions, because not everybody has access to private institutions, either because of distance or because of financial restraints. So the more it is used at the tertiary level, the more it keeps up to date with vocabulary, with new developments. And language is never stagnant. It always reinvents itself. And I think if we don't make room for more languages at tertiary level, we are really facing the threat that some of the languages that are much smaller than Afrikaans will eventually dwindle and die. And you always lose a bit of knowledge when a language disappears that cannot be replaced.
Absolutely.
It's a lot like an endangered species.
Do you have any idea how many people opt for Afrikaans at Unisa as a medium of instruction?
Unfortunately, Unisa's own statistics are very are not good. Let's put it like that. So they cannot tell us exactly how many students, but in their court papers they always use the figure of between 10 and 12%. So if we work on their estimate that they have 300,000 students, it means that the home language of about 30,000 students would be Afrikaans.
All right. The court's essentially giving the institution until the 2023 academic year to revise its language policy. From Afriforum's side, what happens next?
Well, next we will have to monitor whether they start advertising their courses and modules which will be available in Afrikaans, so that the students who want to enroll for 2023 have enough time to do that. And then also see what happens within those modules. Are students actually allowed to do their exams and their projects in Afrikaans, and if they need help, do they have access to a lecturer in Afrikaans?
All right. Alana Bailey, thanks very much indeed for your take on this. Congratulations to Afriforum for moving, I think, constitutionalism forward more than anything else.